In this video, I will address the role of theory in a doctoral study. The DBA uses the term theoretical framework for quantitative studies and conceptual framework for qualitative study. Regardless of the term, theory or conceptual framework, a Walden doctoral study must provide a lens through which the business problem will be viewed. This is known as the theory in quantitative research and conceptual framework in qualitative research. In this video, I will identify the role of theory and conceptual framework in research and provide a working definition. I will then discuss the application of theory and conceptual framework in the doctoral study. An example will be presented using transformational leadership theory and conceptual framework will be discussed for quantitative and qualitative methodologies respectively. A model for presenting the theory and conceptual framework section in section 1 of the doc studies will then be presented. I will conclude by reiterating key points and providing a summary of the tutorial. Let's begin the tutorial on theory and conceptual framework. Theory and conceptual framework can be defined in many ways. However, one definition is that a theory or conceptual framework is an interrelated set of constructs, variables, hypotheses, or propositions that offer an explanation for a phenomenon. More so, theory or conceptual framework offers a systematic view of the phenomenon, or in other words, theory or conceptual framework provides a lens through which to view a phenomenon. Let's examine it from the perspective of a lens through which to view a phenomenon. Assume the business problem or phenomena is a failure rate of small businesses, an obvious business concern. It stands to reason there are a plethora of explanations that can be offered for the failure of small businesses. As the researcher, you have the choice of lens from which to view the problem. For example, you might hypothesize or rationalize that transformational leadership characteristics offer a systematic view for the failure of small businesses. Specifically, you might hypothesize or rationalize that a leader's transformational leadership characteristics are influential in the success of small businesses. As such, your study would be grounded in transformational leadership theory or transformational leadership conceptual framework. Or perhaps you hypothesize or rationalize that servant leadership characteristics offer a systematic view for the failure of small businesses. Specifically, you might hypothesize or rationalize that a leader's servant leadership characteristics are influential in the success of small businesses. As such, your study would then be grounded in servant leadership theory or conceptual framework. It stands to reason that the number of lenses through which a problem or phenomena can be viewed is limitless. Only your imagination stands between you and selecting the theory or conceptual framework that can be used to connect your study to existing knowledge. Perhaps one of the most misunderstood aspects of theory or conceptual framework is how to apply it in a doctoral study. First, I will present a brief depiction of the theoretical constructs and then formulate a viable quantitative research question, and then discuss the data collection process, specifically how the instrument aligns with the theory. A quantitative study grounded in transformational leadership theory must measure or assess the constructs underlying the theory. The broad constructs of transformational leadership theory are idealized attributes, idealized behaviors, inspirational motivation, stimulation, and idealized consideration. Therefore, an instrument such as the multifaceted leadership questionnaire is to be used to measure the underlying constructs of transformational leadership theory. Any other instrument not proven to assess transformational leadership cannot, and I reemphasize, cannot be used in a study grounded in transformational leadership theory. If so, you are not testing the theory and the study does not have construct validity. That is, you are not measuring what you are purporting to measure. For example, the servant leadership questionnaire cannot be used in a study grounded in transformational leadership theory, as it measures constructs underlying servant leadership theory. Let's now look at an example for a qualitative phenomenological study. The theoretical constructs still remain the same regardless of the methodology or design. However, research questions are posed differently and interview questions are included. Notice the research and interview questions are encoded with words that foreshadow the phenomenological design. More so, as it applies to theory, notice how the transformational leadership theoretical propositions, underlined in red, are infused in the interview questions. This allows the participants to respond according to the theoretical tenets and propositions of the transformational leadership conceptual framework. For example, asking a question such as, what are your experiences regarding your leader's humility as it pertains to your job satisfaction would not be appropriate for a study grounded in transformational leadership theory. Humility is a construct underlying servant leadership conceptual framework and does not align with the transformational leadership conceptual framework. As you can see, it is vitally important to immerse yourself into the literature pertaining to your conceptual framework to gain a good understanding of the framework. More important, your literature review must include an exhaustive review of the literature pertaining to the conceptual framework you are proposing for your study. This is extremely important as you will be required to discuss your findings as they confirm, disconfirm, extend, etc., the extant literature on your conceptual framework. You must critically analyze and synthesize the studies where your conceptual framework has been the lens through which the phenomenon has been viewed. As outlined in the theory, you are required to present a brief overview of your theory or conceptual framework in Section 1 of the proposal. Please note, this is not to be a detailed review of your theory or framework. The detailed review is required in the review of the literature section. Here, a model for presenting the theory or framework section is offered. You will want to state the name of the theory or identify the conceptual framework. Identify the theorist, if applicable. List key concepts of the theory or framework. Identify any propositions or hypotheses. And identify how the theory or framework applies to your study. Please note, there are obvious variations to this model depending upon your particular study and topic. However, The intent is to briefly present the key aspects of your theory and/or framework and show how it fits into your study. Please take a moment to read the quantitative theory model using transformational leadership theory as an example. Notice the elements presented in the model on the previous slide are presented in this example. See if you are able to identify each of the 5 elements. Please take a moment to read the qualitative conceptual framework model using transformational leadership framework as an example. Notice the elements presented in the model are present in this example. See if you are able to identify each of the 5 elements. There are several key points to take away from this video. First, theory or conceptual framework offers a lens through which a business problem can be explored in qualitative studies or explained in quantitative studies. Theories and conceptual frameworks are found in the literature, and this literature review must be an exhaustive review of the literature on your theory. Theoretical constructs, variables, propositions, etc. must be measured in quantitative studies. Again, you cannot ground your study in one theory and measure constructs, variables, etc. underlying another theory or not measure the constructs of the theory at all. For qualitative studies, these theoretical constructs, variables, propositions, theoretical tenets, etc., inform the interview questions. Finally, a concise model is to be presented in Section 1 to introduce the theory or your conceptual framework. In this video tutorial, I have identified the role of theory and conceptual framework in research and provided a working definition. I then discussed the application of theory and conceptual framework in the doctoral study. An example was presented using transformational leadership theory and conceptual framework for quantitative and qualitative methodologies, respectively. Models for presenting the theory for quantitative research and conceptual framework for qualitative research in Section 1 of the doc study was then presented. Finally, I concluded by reiterating key points and providing a summary of the tutorial. On this slide, you will also see links to the problem statement and purpose statement video tutorials. The DBA methodology team hopes that you find these tutorials very useful and a significant aid in navigating successfully through the doctoral study process. Please be on the lookout for additional training tutorials from the DBA methodology team. Thank you for your time in reviewing this tutorial and best wishes moving forward. Thank you.